As of 2026, the Nacha rules that govern how every direct deposit in America moves from your employer's or the Social Security Administration's bank to yours have changed in three specific ways. And together, they affect roughly how early your money becomes available, how clearly it's labeled on your statement, and how closely it gets watched for fraud before it reaches you. These aren't proposals. They're finalized rules with real effective dates already locked in for this year. Here's what this video covers: the rule that could get your direct deposit into your account earlier than before, the new labeling requirement that helps you spot a real payroll or benefit deposit versus something suspicious, and the expanded fraud monitoring that could occasionally delay a transaction for review. Stay to the end. The third change is the one most people overlook, and it matters most for understanding why a deposit might occasionally take a little longer to clear, even when nothing's actually wrong. Before we go further, nobody at your bank is required to walk you through changes to the payment network itself, even when those changes affect exactly when your Social Security deposit or pension check shows up. That's the only job this channel does. Plain English, no persona, no upsell. If that's useful, subscribe and turn on the bell so you catch the next one. It's free. Here's why now, specifically. Nacha, the organization that governs the ACH network, the system behind virtually every direct deposit, whether it's a paycheck, a pension, or a Social Security payment, rolled out a coordinated set of rule changes throughout 2026, driven by two goals: getting your money to you faster and cutting down on fraud moving through the same network. None of this happens because your bank decided to be nicer to you. It happens because an industry-wide rule now requires it, on a specific date, whether your bank was ready or not. If you're thinking, this isn't me, direct deposit already just works, the first change specifically affects how early in the morning your money becomes usable, which matters even if nothing about your deposit itself changes. And if you're thinking, I don't need to know the technical rules behind my bank, the second change is about something you'll actually see on your own bank statement, which matters if you're ever trying to tell a real deposit apart from a scam. Here's the part worth understanding clearly. Banks don't send out a notice that says the industry rule behind your direct deposit changed on this date. These changes get covered in banking trade publications that ordinary account holders never see, and then one day your money simply behaves a little differently, with no explanation attached. Understanding what changed and why is the only way to actually notice the improvement or catch something that looks off. The first rule, standard ACH credit funds, the kind used for most payroll, pension, and benefit direct deposits, must now be made available to you by 9 a.m. local time on the settlement date, closing a long-standing gap where banks receiving a deposit file after 5 p.m. the day before could delay posting those funds later into the settlement day. This rule takes effect September 18th, 2026. Verify, confirm no delay or extension to the September 18th, 2026 effective date for this fund's availability rule as of your published date. This affects the retiree who's used to checking their account first thing in the morning on deposit day just as much as one who doesn't check until later. Either way, funds that used to potentially trickle in throughout the morning must now be posted and available right at 9 a.m. local time. The catch: this rule affects standard, non-same-day ACH credits specifically, where it doesn't speed up processing that happens outside the ACH network entirely, and some smaller institutions may take a little longer than large ones to fully implement the new posting behavior even after the effective date. The action right now, if your direct deposit typically posts later than 9 a.m. on your usual deposit day after September 18th, 2026, contact your bank directly and ask whether they're compliant with Nacha's updated funds availability rule. The second rule, standardized company entry descriptions, effective March 20th, 2026, which require payroll direct deposit payments to carry the label payroll and certain consumer web-based debit transactions to carry the label purchase on the transaction record your bank displays. This affects the retiree still receiving payroll-style direct deposit from part-time work just as much as one relying entirely on Social Security or a pension, because clearer, standardized labeling makes it easier for anyone to glance at their account activity and recognize what a transaction actually is, rather than deciphering a vague or inconsistent code your bank used to display. The catch: this specific labeling rule applies to payroll-type ACH credits and certain e-commerce debit transactions. It doesn't relabel every single transaction type on your statement, so you may still see other codes for different kinds of deposits or withdrawals. The action right now, after March 20th, 2026, get familiar with how your specific bank displays a payroll labeled transaction on your statement or app, so you have a clear baseline for what a legitimate payroll-style deposit should look like going forward. The third rule is the one that matters most for understanding a possible delay, and it's about fraud monitoring rather than speed. Starting with large financial institutions on March 20th, 2026, and expanding to essentially all remaining banks, credit unions, and third-party payment processors by June 22nd, 2026, Nacha now requires risk-based fraud monitoring on ACH credit transactions across the entire network, not just at the largest institutions as before. This affects the retiree receiving a routine, unchanged direct deposit just as much as one whose account activity has recently looked different than usual, since risk-based monitoring specifically flags transactions that deviate from an account's typical pattern for closer review. The catch, an otherwise legitimate deposit that looks unusual, a different employer, a first-time benefit payment, a larger amount than normal, could occasionally get held briefly for review under this expanded monitoring, which can feel alarming if you don't know it's a routine fraud check rather than a problem with your specific account. The action right now, if a direct deposit you're expecting is delayed beyond its normal timing after these dates, call your bank directly and ask whether the transaction was flagged for standard fraud review rather than assuming something is wrong with your account. Before this week is over, do 3 things. 1. Note your usual direct deposit day and time, and after September 18th, 2026, check whether your funds are posting by 9 a.m. local time as the new rule requires. 2. Familiarize yourself with how a payroll labeled transaction appears on your specific bank statement or app after March 20th, 2026, so you have a clear reference point. 3. If an expected deposit is ever delayed after these rules take effect, call your bank and ask directly whether it was held for standard fraud monitoring before assuming a deeper problem. 3 steps under 15 minutes combined, keeping you oriented as the mechanics behind your own deposits shift underneath you. Here's what's worth remembering. None of these 3 rules were designed with you in the room. They were built by an industry group to solve industry problems. Speed, consistency, fraud, and the fact that they happen to affect your Social Security deposit or your pension payment is almost incidental to how they were written. The rules take effect on their own schedule. Noticing what changed and knowing what to ask if something looks different is entirely on you. That's not an exaggeration, that's just how these changes work. If you know someone over 60 who relies on direct deposit and has no idea these changes are happening behind the scenes, send them this video. You could be the reason they recognize a routine fraud hold for what it is instead of panicking, or notice their money actually arriving earlier than it used to. That's what this channel is here to do. In the next video, I'll walk through exactly how to set up account alerts with your bank so you're notified the moment a direct deposit posts, rather than checking manually every time. I'll see you there.